The reason I'm here is that, yeah, look, I started IPAC up some 30-odd years ago, so I spent all of my life talking to people about money, either as a professional manager of money with the $13-odd billion we look after there for our clients, but probably where you tend to see me more often is TV or radio and that sort of stuff, and that for me is all a bit of an accident. But it's certainly, the Money Show in particular was a great medium in terms of talking to people about the basics of money. A very, very clear gap between Australians aged above about 45 and Australians aged under about 45. Why is that? Pretty simply, the reason, as from a government policy objective viewpoint, we are now, along with 43 other countries in the OECD, running major government programs around the world to improve financial literacy, is it's one of the major challenges for our community. And you're thinking, well, why is that? Well, your problem may be that, like me, you grew up in a world where the world would not allow you not to have financial literacy. So, what do I mean? I went to university and I was a Griffith boy. In fact, Griffith is a great place to grow up. My father was a doctor down there. He's about the only legal drug dealer for about 300 miles. And so I went down to University of New South Wales to do my undergraduate degree and postgraduate stuff and so on. And the issue for me, like all of you, was very simple, is that in the mid-1970s, I'm 56 years old, so I was at university in 1974. So in 1974, if I didn't get to the bank by 3 o'clock on Friday, how did I get money on the weekend? You didn't, unless you could bludge it off your mates, and my mates were no richer than I was. You know, I think we've forgotten, we're just talking about Google Plus at my table a moment ago, for example. The world has changed so much. Let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago where if you didn't get to the bank by 3 o'clock on a Friday, you had no money. Now, a young journalist will always say to me, what about ATM machines? And I'd say, well, no, they weren't invented. And the young journalist says, but, you know, weren't they sort of 1832? And then the one I do love is that, oh, come on, Paul, okay, you couldn't get your hands on cash at university, says the young journalist from the Financial Review, but you must have had a credit card problem. And I said, I know you're not going to believe this. They didn't exist. And the young journalist goes, hang on, we're not talking 1816 here. Like, we're talking the 1970s. My parents were alive then. I can remember them. I said the only credit card in existence in the 1970s was Diners. It was very much a private club, and certainly they weren't going to give one to a uni student pulling beers in an RSL club. So no, I had no credit card problems. I didn't have a credit card. And I say to these young journos, and if I did have a credit card, I would have credit card problems. Because if you think at the pub on a Saturday night, when I'd taken my $10 out for the weekend and I'd bought $10 worth of beer, if you think if there was an ATM machine there, I wouldn't have used my credit card to get a cash advance to buy more beer, I think you're probably wrong. I think I would have done. So basically, we had no access to money unless it was in our pocket. Then the young journalists always make me laugh, because they always, after that, they go, oh, come on, you must have had a mobile phone problem. Do you remember, when did you see your first mobile phone? Yeah, I saw my first one, the first year of the Money program. Now, this gentleman here has nailed it. You've nailed it, sir. Yep, you've nailed it. In 1993, when I started doing money for Kerry Packer, which much to everyone's amazement, particularly Kerry Packer's became the #1 most watched show on Australian TV for year after year after year on Channel 9, 3 million city viewers, quite extraordinary. But I saw my first one, and your description, and the gentleman here is going, yep, it was a rubber brick, with a dirty great big rubber handle and a backpack full of batteries that lasted about 45 minutes if you were close to the CBD. Seriously, that was only 1993. And these young journalists actually don't believe me. They're convinced that the mobile phone was with the Wright brothers when the Wright brothers got a plane in the air in 1906. So basically, what do all these devices do? These devices, in my opinion, have enhanced our lives immeasurably. It's just extraordinary. I mean, I did get a little lost today because I kind of assumed the club would be in the centre of town. No great drama. Turned on the good old iPhone, and the iPhone said, look, you idiot, do next left, do next right, and here you are. It's just unbelievable. You know, seriously, it's just fantastic. So the point, though, is that what has happened, though, is each of these things, however, is added to your cost base. It is really interesting how money has become completely invisible. You can spend money you never had. On the way out here, the little tag on the front window of my car's beeped a couple of times. So therefore, I assume I've spent a few dollars in various tolls. Interestingly, by the way, I've got myself, my wife, 3 kids who drive, 24, 22 and about to turn 18. And as part of our family financial literacy, we were looking at our budget the other day. Between the 5 of us, our family spends nearly $5,000 a year on that beeping tag in the window of our combined cars. Anyone? We didn't really know that, by the way. Why didn't we really know it? Because obviously I'm not a silly father. I make sure the children's tags are on the children's credit cards. Because if the tags are on Dad's credit card, the children go over the bridge. Both children go to, they've just finished Sydney Uni, but they typically both jump in separate cars and both drive to Sydney Uni 1 minute apart from each other, preferring to drive over the bridge at 1 minute to 9, so they pay the $4, not the $3 at 9 o'clock. As soon as the tags went onto their credit cards, they get the bus together. That's what I call financial literacy in action, folks. If you want to find a lack of financial literacy in children, don't go to poor families. Go to wealthy families. Where we find good financial literacy in the Australian community is, funnily enough, in amongst unemployed folk, in amongst people doing it tough, and where we find the worst financial literacy is people and families with high income streams who don't really need to worry about the last dollar too much. That's where we find kids who are hopeless with money, because they are not forced in the system. I didn't want to be good with money when I was growing up. I didn't like it at all, but I had no choice. So the issue we now have, and why is this a public policy issue? It is just simply invisible money. And the modelling that children are getting is really interesting, because even if you are a financially literate parent or grandparent, you've got to worry about the shaping behaviour you're demonstrating. Let's say you're good with money, okay? So what you do is you amble down to the local supermarket and you've got a grandchild or a child with you, particularly in the ages we're interested in, particular, around about 6 to about 11 is a particularly fascinating group of kids. And what you do is, if you're good with money, is when you get to the front with your great pile of stuff, the checkout person, and the checkout person, you hand over your EFTPOS card, or if they don't charge you a surcharge, which people like Woolies and so on generally don't, you hand over your Amex, because then you'll get most frequent flyer points at no cost. But particularly if you're doing EFTPOS, you may well ask for a bit of cash out. Why do you want cash? Because you know if you're using EFTPOS, if you get cash out there, you'll pay nothing for access to your cash, and you need the cash to buy fish from the fish shop next door or whatever it may be, who only takes cash. To the 8-year-old child, this is a fascinating experience. This didn't happen to you when you were 8. When you were 8, Mum or Dad got to the checkout person, they gave them cash, the checkout person gave them bags of stuff. Now what happens to the little 8-year-old is, Mum or Dad who's been good with money, the person puts all the groceries in bags, gives them to you, and gives you the cash you've asked for. Bloody hell, says the 8-year-old. Bloody hell. The world's a truly great place. Have you ever tried with an 8-year-old asking, where does money come from? Where did your money come from when you were growing up? You had to queue in the bank with Mum or Dad. If there wasn't cash around, you couldn't spend it. Pretty simple stuff. Or Mum and Dad might have written out a cheque.